Hi, fifth graders, welcome back. Today we're reviewing Unit 3 content on the American government. Our goals are to describe the colonial governments and how they shaped American democracy. So first, a little bit about American government today and in the past. We have what's known as a democracy, also known as a republic. So democracy and republic are synonyms. This is a type of government where people vote to elect their leaders. And so let's think about what we already know about American government today. We know that in 2016, we had an election where Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump were both running for president. And the way that we chose the president is that people voted to elect that leader. So in America, we have a democracy where we vote for our leaders. And the word democracy comes from the people and kratos. Demos is the people, kratos is to rule. In a democracy, the people rule. A leader is only as powerful as their ability to get votes from voters. And so here we see people standing on a plank. And if these people or voters get off of the plank, that politician is going to fall into the hole. He's not going to be reelected. So leaders need to be elected by the people. So they need to serve the people that are voting for them. We have a democracy in America today. And like I said, we vote for representatives, for president, for governors, for city council members. We have the power in government by voting people in and out of office. So we know we voted President Obama into office in 2008 and 2012. We just recently elected Mayor Cantrell into office in December. Our government today was influenced by other governments in Europe and in colonial America. So our government today didn't just come out of nowhere. We borrowed ideas from previous governments in Europe and from the governments that we found in our colonies when we were just the 13 American colonies. So this here is a picture of what Parliament would have looked like during colonial times. That was a British government body where elected officials would come together and vote on things. So here's a little bit what the colonial government structure looked like. Technically, the king was in charge of everything. So like if he told the colonies to do something, they had to do it. But for the most part, the king would allow the colonies to kind of run themselves. So there would be a royal governor, a council, and a colonial assembly in most of the government. So let's focus a lot on these early colonies, those 13 American colonies you guys learned about, the New England, the Middle, and the Southern colonies last week. Let's see what their governments looked like. The early American colonies set up governments that supported democratic ideas. These ideas influenced our government today. So let's see what those ideas are. First is just an influence on those American colonies. That was the English Bill of Rights. We know that England, also known as Great Britain, was the country that owned the American colonies, so it makes sense that the colonial governments borrowed ideas from England. The English Bill of Rights outlined the list of rights that people in England had, and it gave them the right to choose government representatives. It influenced colonial democracies. Colonial democracies liked the idea of giving rights to citizens and giving citizens the right to vote. So here we see a king and he's saying, a Bill of Rights, you don't trust me? At this time, a lot of countries were ruled by just a single king or queen, and the king or queen would make all the decisions for people. People didn't have a say. They couldn't vote and ask the king to do a certain thing, and they didn't pick the king. The king was just born into their job. And so around this time, people are starting to demand both more rights and the ability to choose their leaders. So here we see our first form of a democracy government is the Mayflower Compact. This was a agreement of how to rule the the Plymouth colony that was written on the Mayflower boat. The Mayflower Compact at the Plymouth colony was an early example of self-rule. The colonists agreed to follow the rules and laws set up by their government. So this is significant for a lot of different reasons. It creates somewhat of a democracy in the American colonies. It's also important because this is a clear step when people are saying, we all agree to be ruled by these laws, and we're going to help write them all together. So this is when people are agreeing to be ruled. The Virginia House of Burgesses. This was an early government body that allowed citizens to elect legislators to represent them in government. This government came about in Virginia, and it was just, we continue to learn about it today because the House of Burgesses had people who had been elected, known as legislators, making decisions in government. So this is another example of a democracy in the early colonies, and we borrow ideas from that. We have legislators today in America. They work for our Senate and our House of Representatives. The Fundamental Orders of Connecticut. This is another colony and it's another democracy government. So they called their government the Fundamental Orders of Connecticut. And this allowed elected legislators to make laws, collect taxes, and admit free people in the colony. People were allowed to vote for representatives to make decisions for them in government. So again, we're seeing this representative democracy, this democracy where people are voting for legislators to make decisions for them in government. And here's our last example. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk about the Delaware Charter is that they did something else that we borrowed in America today in our government. The Delaware Charter allowed freedom of religion. We still have freedom of religion in America today. So this colony said, you can practice whatever religion you want. Our government will protect you. And this was not found everywhere in the American colonies, and it wasn't found everywhere in the world. So this was a really important idea, and it's an idea that America still has today. You're allowed to practice any religion you want in America today. Okay, you have 3 review questions. Write your answers on your paper, and you have a great day.